Robinson here with the Science on Google Plus community. So welcome to our, it's our third Hangout conversation, and this one's in honor of YouTube Geek Week. We're joined today by Joe Hansen, actually from last week's Hangout with It's Okay to Be Smart, and Derek Muller. Muller? Derek, how do you say your last name? Derek Muller, but you know him as Veritasium. So we're here to talk physics and exploration and creativity in a scientific perspective. So I guess before we get started, we kind of have it's a special day for the Science on Google Plus community because we just reached 100,000 people in the community. So this is the beginning of something really amazing. We've just launched the Hangout series. We'll soon be doing virtual poster sessions and a number of other really cool ways that you can engage with scientists and other people interested in science, just to kind of get the conversation going and build a platform for people to connect together around ideas, a really fundamental human element. So I guess let's get started by introducing everyone on the call. So how about Andre, would you like to say hello?
Yes, so my name is André, so I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Concordia University in Canada, in Montreal, and I'm here to ask a lot of questions. So I'll do it. Cool.
I guess I should have introduced myself. I'm Amy Robinson. I'm coming to you guys from MIT's Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences, and I help labs here at MIT crowdsource research, primarily with iWire, which is a game to map the brain. So Nick, you're back. Would you like to say introduce yourself, say hello?
I'll try. Maybe my microphone's working. So I'm Nick Hammond. I'm in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the University of Rochester, and interested in things like motivation in chemistry courses, that kind of research. So.
Joe?
Oh, sorry about that, guys. Hey, I'm Joe Hansen. I make a show for PBS Digital Studios called It's Okay to Be Smart. I have a blog of the same name. I'm a recent PhD grad in biology, so.
So you can call him Dr. Joe now.
Dr. Joe, that's right.
So I'll go ahead and go. My name's Jason Davison. I'm a PhD student at the University of Waterloo. And I'm in the Earth Science department looking at how water moves throughout the subsurface, surface, and atmosphere, looking at the entire water cycle. And we're trying to look at how climate change impacts water resources and the opposite of how water resources affect climate change.
Cool.
Cool. I'm Derek Muller, creator of Veritasium, and I guess I graduated my PhD, which was in physics education research, how to make films to actually teach physics. So now I just make YouTube videos more or less full-time. That's my thing.
That's really awesome. So you did a PhD on physics education. First of all, I didn't even know that you could get a PhD in that.
That's right. There are more and more physics departments around the world that have an education department, and I think that's really good because you need people looking into how to really communicate physics, and you need those people to have a deep understanding and appreciation for physics. You know, it can't just come out of an education department. You need, kind of physicists looking at it.
Yeah. So during this Hangout, we're just going to be talking with Derek and just talking about all sorts of different things. And we would like to engage with you, all of the viewers. So leave your questions on the event page. We're also beta testing Google Plus's questions feature, so you can add the questions straight into the live stream of this video. So that's the last little bit of housekeeping. And now on to the awesome science, right? So why videos? I think this is Joe's question.
Yeah, you stole one of my questions.
Sorry.
You're asking me why videos?
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a filmmaker as a kid. I loved acting. I loved making little videos. And in fact, I've been making videos since 2001, I would say. I made a whole bunch of little sort of skits and comedic videos with my engineering buddies while I was doing my engineering degree at Queen's in Canada. So that's kind of where I got my start. And then I just sort of moved on from that. I think all of us who are in this sort of medium, or everyone on YouTube who's making these sort of science or explanatory videos, feels that there is some power in making a really good video to explain something. So I am like that, but I'm also skeptical, from my background doing a PhD in this topic about, what you really have to do in order to make a video work, make people actually learn from it. And we've lost our hoster. What do you guys want to talk about while we wait for her to come back? Oh.
Okay. So what was your background? So what did you study in engineering then?
I studied engineering physics at Queen's University, and engineering physics with a mechanical option.
Okay, and then what made you do the split towards education? It was mostly your background with films, or
I just really wanted to be a filmmaker. Like I said, I didn't even need to make films about physics, but I wanted to make films that were meaningful to me, and of course science is really meaningful to me. I worked on some other student films for a time when I was in Australia, and something that really upset me was there are so many dramatic films where they're just rehashing all the same old themes, and there's nothing really new or exciting or interesting about them. That's still what I feel about a lot of entertainment, and entertainment done badly. It's typically just, cliched. I mean, how many crime shows are there on TV? It drives me nuts. Like, I don't understand how the public has this appetite for it, where I'd much rather see, people getting out there and really digging into some of the awesome science that there is, because it's limitless.
So Derek, we just got back from VidCon last week, where we were the convention all about YouTube. So kind of an extension to why videos. Why do you think YouTube works so well for education, like better than just video in general?
That's a really tough one. I mean, I think the fundamental strength of YouTube is its numbers. I mean, it's obviously the biggest video sharing platform in the world, and I think that simply makes it, something that you cannot turn your nose or turn away from. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm not going to go post on Vimeo because I'm just not going to reach the same number of people. When I was in Sydney, I was teaching groups of about 14 kids, and I loved doing it. There was great engagement, and I was constantly having this massive dialogue with these kids about all things physics, and I loved it. But it was only 14 kids at a time, and now we put out a video and it gets hundreds of thousands, and that's feels like if I spend more time crafting my message and making a really cool video, it's worth it for me. It's bang for buck, and it's there forever. So absolutely, YouTube is the only place that I would see at the moment it's really worth putting my energy into.
What kind of audience do you have at first? Like, because I think right now you have like a pretty broad audience, right? Not only people like that are interested in physics, but like what kind of audience did you have at first? Like, were you targeting like people who were like interested in physics? Also?
I think my early idea about what audience I wanted a very general audience, and preferably really an audience without a science background. That's where I started, because I thought I'm going to take people from the very basics of science all the way through to the most complex. So if anyone theoretically ever wanted to know everything, they could start at the first video and just work through to the last. That didn't work for me, and I think it wasn't a very good growth strategy, because basically it's like you're trying to get an audience of people that are not really interested in learning about what you have to say. So I don't know what the appropriate analogy here, but it's like trying to show a hockey fan lots and lots of basketball. It's like, well, if they were basketball fans, they would be into that already. So over time, I've sort of steered the channel away from the most basic and simple science that I was doing to start with into sort of more complicated topics, and topics that really interest me. So I've almost changed my audience from sort of a novice audience into an audience who thinks kind of like me. What is cool? What is something I haven't heard before? What is something I didn't know? How does a word really work in a way, that tell me it in a way that sort of changes how I see the universe. So that's the sort of the direction I've been taking the channel.
So is that how pretty much you get your ideas for your videos now? Like questions that you have yourself?
That's right. Yeah. Now often I'm engaged with questions that I don't know the answer to. And I think I've seen that more and more over the last 6 to 12 months, where I'm like, I kind of think I understand this, but I don't really, and so I'm going to dig into it to the nth degree. And sometimes, what I find shocks me, like with the kilogram sphere, I had no idea of the whole history of the kilogram, or, that we still depended on this object in Paris as the kilogram. I knew about the meter and all that sort of stuff, but the kilogram has a crazy history. I mean, when they told me that they only take this kilogram out once every like 25 or 50 years with 2 locked keys, or three locked keys, independently controlled, it's the most ridiculous and arcane thing that we have in our lives, and yet everything depends on it. I just think it's crazy.
I think my favorite part of that video is when you related it to the unit of the pound, where it still goes back to the kilogram, where no matter where you go, you're still at the kilogram.
That's right. The kilogram, this uncertain thing, is what everyone is basing their measurements on. It's nuts.
Scale
So how
of
did
1
it
to 10,
feel?
how scared were you to actually pick that thing up?
It's a funny story because I can show you the outtakes, but the lady who I was talking to, Katie, she really did not want me to touch it. Like, she wasn't feigning like, no, don't touch this. It was honestly like, seriously, you have a camera here, but I still like absolutely do not want you to touch this. Like, only 10 people have touched it besides us. Like, I don't know, you were not touching this. So. Although I was concerned for myself about touching it, I was more in coercive mode where I felt like I had to be like, you know, come on, it'll be great.
Don't do it.
So it was more about convincing her that it would be okay for me to touch it than, you know, me, you know, freaking out. But I didn't want to touch it for long, so I seriously only held it for about 5 seconds, even though I would have liked to like toss it back and forth and freak her out a little bit. But I didn't do that. I'm a nice guy.
Play drop it almost.
Yeah. It would not have gone well.
We actually have, speaking of interesting things that you've done in videos, we have a question here from Mark Liederbach, who asks Derek, what is the craziest thing you've done to explain something in a video? And he says he loves your videos, man, by the way.
No, I appreciate that. I feel like one of the craziest things I did was I went bungee jumping. And to me, that was worse than skydiving. I've done both of those in the auspices of, you know, this is physics, talking physics. I don't know if you've seen the bungee jump one, but before I jump off the platform, I have the woman who's like tying up my harness around my legs. So this is the woman who's attaching the rope to my legs. And I ask her sort of, when you jump off that platform, are you speeding up or is it just constant speed all the way down? And she said to me, yeah, it's basically just a constant speed. You know, you're not accelerating at all. And so I guess it really concerns me when people who are actually very intimately involved with suiting you up to throw you off a platform, off a bridge, they don't have a sense of the fact that, you know, gravity's pulling you down, you're speeding up. So yeah, I feel like everyone could use a bit of a physics lesson. But that was a very, very, very scary experience for me. So it's one of those ones.
Did you feel like you were speeding up, or did you feel like you were going the same speed when you were falling?
That is a very good question. You have the sense when you jump off the platform initially that something is really, 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 really wrong. Like you have that really crazy sensation in your stomach that I don't even know if I felt it as much when I went skydiving. I don't know how to explain it. You just know. Like, and I think that's kind of like an accelerometer in your gut, where your gut is saying like, no, this is not good, and you know it, so you're getting this adrenaline everywhere in your body. So in that way, I knew that something was happening, but I wouldn't say there's a difference between that and going really fast, because obviously you're not getting pushed by anything, you know, like there's nothing contact with your body, so yeah.
So I've got a question about you know, your research that you did in your PhD. This is kind of a setup because I think I know the answer, but let's talk a little bit about misconceptions. So you're really big about correcting misconceptions. So can you just kind of talk about you know, how you came to that and what you think about how that works for science education?
Well, it's interesting in science education. I feel like there is a fashion right now where a lot of people will say the only way to teach science is by getting students to do science. So everything needs to be hands-on, everything needs to be active and interactive. In a way, I kind of see where that's coming from, but I just wondered if it's a bit strong, that whole idea that, you know, to really know Newton's laws, you need to actually do something with them, or whether that should be your first experience of Newton's laws. So partly my thesis was about, can I just explain things to you in a video and get you to understand it? And so I tried putting in a video, you know, the best textbook explanations with some real-world examples, some diagrams, animations, basically the best possible explanation I could do. That's what we tried in a video. And for novice learners, that worked not a bit. So the novice learners came out saying, I learned a lot, that was great, it was clear, it was concise, it was a review, I loved it. And then when you actually test them on have they got the right ideas according to a Newtonian view of the world, then they didn't. But there's a flip side to that, which is when you showed people who had a previous experience in physics, they did actually learn something from seeing that summary. So I guess my point is, if you're a novice, you get nothing from a summary like that. if you have previously learned it, maybe it's not as fresh in your mind, and you get that as a refresher, it seems to twig people back in, and they're getting a lot more right answers on the post-test. So I guess I was seeing a real dependence on your prior knowledge. And the whole point was these novice learners had different ideas about what they were going to see in the video, and so they actually kind of saw what they thought they were going to see and what they were thinking before, and not what was actually said to them. So that's what makes addressing the misconceptions so important, is if someone has a totally different perceptual way of seeing the world, then you really need to address that first before you can move on to anything, and we found that was actually quite effective in the research.
It's interesting that you say that a lot of times what the things that we talk about are that if students are just being lectured at, they're not actually understanding what they're hearing. So I wonder what you think about from your videos. I mean, your video is in fact a small recorded lecture, but could you maybe speak about the twist of, however, going back to what Joe was saying, having a misconception being presented to you, like, look, I know you think this, and that's wrong. So
yeah.
is there a difference there?
That is really effective from what I can see, that making people really explicitly aware of an alternative conception, that is essential. Raising that to the surface. I found students, when I interviewed them after watching one of these videos with a misconception in it, sometimes they hadn't made a full Newtonian shift, and they didn't fully understand the universe the way I would like them to, but at least they could identify the alternative conception, the thing that they should avoid. So they were saying afterwards, I can't really explain it to you, but I know there's no force in the ball. They said that very clearly, like that's a misconception when you throw the ball up. So they weren't there yet, but for me, that was kind of a stepping stone along the way. If you can start to identify certain things that you know to be true or know to be not true, that can help you sort of hone in on what is true. So I think that is effective. I mean, I think it's an interesting question, like, are lectures effective? I mean, the thing is, right, I was getting this feedback from everyone that lectures just full stop are not effective, videos are not effective. And yet, we watch a lot of one-way content. We watch a lot of TV, we watch a lot of movies and news, and certain things do stick with us accurately. And so there's a good question of why do some things work and other things don't? And for me, one of the major factors is if you are at least aware of all the various interacting pieces, you're much more able to interact with a one-way presentation about that material. If you are, have alternative conceptions and you're just presented with a one-way thing, you're going to end up kind of worse off than you started. And the trouble with physics is that kind of happens everywhere.
Yeah. We actually have a question from Erica Postuma Adams. Actually, who's watching live right now via the questions app. And she asks, when you interview people for your videos, you frequently try to address these misconceptions. What's the most concerning misconception you've found? And I would like to add, what do you do? How do you, what's your way of innovating awareness on top of that misconception?
Yeah. I'll try to answer Erica's question first. I mean, the most troubling misconceptions for me are the ones that directly relate to policy and the way the world is acting right now. So things like a global warming misconception, or a misconception about the role of CO2 or trees. You may have seen this gentleman who I interviewed, and I said, so what's the deal with trees? And he was saying, oh, well, they're giving out all this carbon dioxide. And so trees are one of the original sources, primary sources of carbon dioxide, just like anything else on this earth. They're contributing to the problem. And that was really where his head was at. So I thought, well, if you have people like that who don't understand the biology of the whole situation, that's a problem. If you have people who perhaps know the biology but still have alternative conceptions about our ability to fix this problem, or what needs to be done, or the magnitude of the problem, or like misconceptions about probability and weather and climate, basically saying, oh, this summer was really cold, so climate change is not happening, or the world is not warming, or whatever. It's all those sorts of problems I really want to address, because I feel like they actually affect the future of humanity, and I don't know. I want to be able to change that. And I don't know if there's any quick fix. To me, it seems like in order to change these alternative conceptions, we really need to be tackling the whole approach to science question. So how many scientists are there out there working on this problem? And are they debating with each other? And what does healthy scientific discourse look like? All those sorts of things I think are really their worldviews about these things that are.
Is Derek still there?
I don't know. My connection, it turns a little robotic, and then my connection drops off.
I guess we can dance right now, waiting for Derek.
Okay, so yeah, we've lost our guest.
So
Do you want to
what
be interviewed
happens?
again, Joe?
So now we're going to interview Joe. Were there any unanswered questions from the Hangout last week? You guys talk amongst yourself really quick. I'm going to send Derek another link to this Hangout just to make sure that he can get back on.
So I think it's important for people to know that there are really exciting things happening with YouTube education. Derek and I were just at VidCon last week, and there's a lot of exciting developments in how these things are getting integrated into classrooms, and you know, there's still not that many channels out there, and so there's a lot of calls for people. If anyone's watching, if you're into STEM, and we want to extend that to STEAM, get the arts and into, you know, even non-science channels to really expand the offerings that are available on YouTube. It's a completely changing world. And VidCon sort of energized us all and reminded us that, you know, there's 11,000 fans there, and they sold out this conference, and all of them want this great educational content. So, oh, he's back. So yeah, we had a lot of encouragement. But one of the takeaways from the educational panels and a lot of the people we met was that, you know, they're hungry. There's just not enough good content out there for them still. So we'd invite everybody else to, you know, come onto make channels.
Cool.
Oh, Derek, you're muted.
You might be on mute, Derek.
Darn you, Google Plus. We're experiencing first world problems right now.
Okay, I'm back. So I was saying, Joe, you were telling them that we had to turn away like 100 people or more at the EDU session?
Yes, and that you know, calling for expansion in channels, get more people and doing this and expanding this to STEAM and humanities and things like that.
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. I mean, I've thought personally about maybe doing something on psych because I find it really interesting. The thing is, I don't know that much about it, so I would be sort of, you know, I would be doing a lot of research. But I've definitely thought about it because I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I would love for there to be more neuroscience and brain-related videos on YouTube. I know all of our iWire players want to know more about it. We just don't have time to make great videos. So we do Hangouts instead with cool people.
We'll chat, Amy. I have a biology degree. We can take care of it.
Yes. Okay, well, I have kind of a less serious question for you, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to, you know, you pose interesting questions. Like I saw one of your videos where you put, you know, weights on the end of fishing line and a cable, and you like pulled it through ice, you know, to see which one would go faster. I'm curious. If you filled up a pool with Jell-O, how high could you jump from and land in the pool and not die?
Wow, that's a bit of a tricky question. I have the feeling that you would. I mean, there's not a sort of cutoff point where, you know, below this centimeter you're going to be fine, above this centimeter you're going to be dead. It's going to be kind of a probability thing of death, ramping up from, you know, very low probability of a meter to, you know, at 100 meters probable certainty of death. But there's a couple things that kind of play into that. One thing is air resistance. So if you jump from an insanely high height, you can only end up going, I mean, as long as you kind of spread yourself out like a skydiver, you could only end up going, yeah, exactly, about 54, 55 meters per second. So that's about 200 kilometers per hour. Now, that is obviously very fast. If you imagine getting hit by a truck going 200 kilometers an hour or 55 meters a second, your chances are not very good. What if that truck's whole front was made of Jell-O? You know, it maybe gives you a bit of a better chance if obviously you're depressing the Jell-O slightly, so that means your deceleration is happening over a longer distance, which means more time, which means less force is exerted on you. And that will break less of your bones and that sort of stuff. I still think you'd probably, you know, your chances would be 98, 99% death if you were terminal velocity into the pool. So I wouldn't want to jump from too high of a height. I'm trying to think about whether it's better or worse than water. there was a guy. So I was going to do a video about this, about jumping off the Harbour Bridge in Sydney. I don't know if you guys have seen this thing, but it's one of the major landmarks in Sydney. The top of that bridge is about 150 meters. If you jumped off the very, very top of that top arch, you would not hit terminal velocity by the time that you reach the ocean below. You would still be speeding up. And I think it would take about 5 seconds to get down there. So you would be approaching terminal velocity, but you wouldn't be quite there yet. And I would say you would probably die for sure. And in fact, in the building of this bridge, back in the 1930s, there were about 3 or 4 people who fell from the bridge during construction who were not tethered to the bridge, because that's just how they rolled back in those days, who in fact did die upon hitting the ocean. I know, it's, it blows my mind that they didn't use tethers when I was walking up there. But there was one guy who fell from the deck level, and he fell about 50 meters into the ocean. And apparently this guy was a former diver, so he was used to diving off these diving boards. And he detached his tool belt. This is the kind of legend. He detached his tool belt and let it drop down below him, apparently breaking the surface tension of the water, and then he fell in afterwards. Now, he did survive. I believe he probably broke both of his legs and a couple feet and maybe his pelvis and that kind of stuff, but he did survive. He went in sort of feet first and very sort of slimlined, which I think is probably your best bet. I don't think that the tool belt really did that much, though. I think it was more about body positioning and just making sure to go straight in and having a bit of luck. So I don't know how to answer your question, but I would say, 10 meters, you're probably okay. 20, 30, 40, things are starting to get dicey. And the other thing I was going to mention to you was it really depends on the walls of your pool. If it was like a concrete pool, you're much worse off than if you've got a sort of your Jello is wrapped in saran wrap or something. I don't know if you guys saw the video from Head Squeeze yesterday, where the guy was jumping into the pool ball or the ball pit thing.
Yes, I need to watch that.
Yeah, he's jumping 10 meters into a pit full of balls like you would have at like IKEA when I was a kid. I used to go and play in those, and that was a lot of fun. But when you're looking at it, you kind of look at it and you think, geez, it doesn't look like they've set up the ball pit very well, because they have like straps of cardboard at the corners with a whole bunch of like plastic wrap around the outside. Like, it looks like the most basic, cheap setup you could ever imagine. But of course, that's exactly what you want, so that when you land in the middle of the balls have somewhere to go on the outsides. And it would be exactly the same for the Jello. The Jello is going to swish down and out. So you'd want to allow it to do that for it to be softest. So again, it's really important how you're encasing your Jello. If you've got a hard case, that's going to make the center of the Jello much harder, and that is obviously not what you want.
So I think the key question is, at what height would you jump into Jello?
I hate heights. I'm actually quite afraid of heights. I'm not going to lie to you.
Sophie, who bungee jumps. I'm expecting a Jello video, by the way.
Oh man, that is going to be a tough one. I would probably go no higher than 10 meters, and I would like it if the Jello was cubed and it was able to move independently of each other, because that gives you a lot more sort of a compression, I feel. So yeah, about 10 meters, and then I start to get worried.
Open challenge to anyone on the internet. Send us a video of this.
No,
just kidding.
Do not do that.
Just kidding. You have to calculate it first.
I will. I'll make you some calculations.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Speaking of science communication, so you have a huge event coming up in Sydney.
I have a couple huge events, in fact. So one is coming up this coming Monday night, which for the rest of the world is Sunday, I want to say.
You have a phone?
Hang on.
Oh, Jello guy.
I don't even have a house phone anymore. My phone
It's Australia. They do things differently.
I know, right? Yeah,
I'm sure it's his mom.
It
has to be his mom.
So that, I hope, is a really important call.
I'll take this opportunity to urge everybody to go to YouTube. On the official YouTube page this week is GeekWeek, and Derek hosted a bunch of great videos yesterday for Science Day that are awesome. I mean, he got to sit at a news desk like he's a real news person. He's grown up. But head over to YouTube to their main channel. They've got different theme days. It's really cool. Embracing being smart on YouTube.
Heck yeah, go Brains. Yeah, I think it's youtube.com/GeekWeek.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah. Did you put out a video, Joe?
Yeah, I would have one out today about animal superpowers. So you can go see if comic books or evolution has given us better powers. I think it's my favorite video I've done yet.
That's really, really awesome. You know, we actually did a hangout with our next door neighbors. They're a Nobel Prize winning lab, and they told us that their research that's now on the cover of Science was inspired by a brainstorm session where they just sat around and they talked about neuroscience questions that came up when they watched movies, like Hollywood movies, and they ended up wondering if you could implant false memories in the brain, and now it landed them on the cover of Science. So I like drawing inspiration from different places.
Yeah, so check out those GeekWeek videos, especially mine and Derek's, but then you can watch all the other ones. So yeah.
So Derek, because we're supposed to end at 8:30, but I guess we can go a little over. So tell us about your events that you have coming up.
Okay, events in Sydney is going to be a massive event. It's called I Effing Love Science Live, and of course it features Elise Andrew, the creator of that page from Facebook. I will also be there. The guys from ASAP Science, Mitchell and Gregory, will be there. Henry from Minute Physics, and Phil Plate, the Bad Astronomer, Karen Bondar, and there's a couple local favorites. Did I say Destin? No. Okay, no, so Destin, Smarter Every Day. So it's going to be a massive event. We're actually flying back. I leave Vancouver this Friday, and I'm landing in Sydney Sunday morning. We go on a boat cruise on Sunday day, and then Monday we're doing this event. So I'm going to have to get over the jet lag very, very, very quickly to make this happen. And then we're going up to North Queensland. We're doing some talks up there. And we're going out to the Great Barrier Reef. Then I'm coming back the following weekend and doing VidInc, which is like a VidCon but in Australia. I think there's going to be Jenna Marbles and so these are not really science types, Mr. Guitar Man and Cass MG, but some of the big names from YouTube. Plus I'll be there. So I'm doing like a science show on the main stage. And then the following Wednesday, I'm doing a show out at the King's School. So I'm doing a show for sort of school kids and for families and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be like a science live event. So I have a non-stop next sort of week and a half.
Nice, nice. Do you ever do events in the U.S.?
I haven't yet, but I'd love to. So it'll happen sooner or later.
Hey, you know, so IFLS they're doing a huge event at the museum, Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in New York.
I had no idea. When is that?
Sometime in August.
Wow.
She can't be stopped.
She can't be stopped. You know, the first neuron ever mapped by gamers in iWire is named IFLS after that Facebook page.
Fantastic. That is awesome.
Yeah, her fans are adamantly for science. Yeah,
it's a great page.
Yeah, right? Well, science is awesome. I mean, when you...
Which is her other page, but thank you.
Where can people go to follow your channel and Twitter and everything like that?
Yeah.
Everything is basically under the Veritasium name, so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah. I don't really like Facebook, to be honest. So, and now Google+. I've just integrated my Google+ and my YouTubes, trying to make them friends. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. It's not the most seamless transition. It took us a little bit of effort to do it as well.
It's a challenge, isn't it? It's
it is.
Keep you on your toes. So.
Cool. Well, I guess you're supposed to end at 8:30, so we're a few minutes over. I want to end with one question that I guess actually Joe asked me in a Google Science Fair hangout. It was, if you could give any advice to your 15-year-old self, what advice would that be?
Man, Joe, you have to ask the tough ones.
Well, you can't blame me on that one. I guess it did come from me.
I've got a video actually on my Veritasium channel where I talk about what happened to me when I finished high school. When I finished high school, I had a real dilemma because I loved science, as I obviously still do, but I also really wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be creative, and so, I mean, what is one to do? I ended up trying to do a backup plan for about 10 years of my life. So between the age of 17 and 27, I basically did my undergraduate degree, my PhD, and I worked for a bit, and I made some money. So, I mean, what do I tell that person who goes on to do things that I really, really enjoyed, but perhaps wasn't my passion? So at 27, I finally felt like, this is it. Let's switch gears. Let's actually start making videos because that's what I've always wanted to do. I don't know what to say, because if I go back and tell that guy like, hey, skip the whole science thing and just start making videos, then I'd be a very, very, very different person than I am today. So I don't know. I'm at a loss for what to say to this guy. I mean, I guess the best advice I could give is do what your gut says is right. And if you're unhappy, if you're uncomfortable, change. Right? You can always change. I feel like the biggest mistake people make is being okay with kind of that uncomfortable feeling like they're not doing what they really want to do. So if you're feeling that, you just gotta change and move on. And I feel like I tried to listen to that at every step along the way, and it was a bit of a circuitous route, but I like where I am now, so, you know, I couldn't have changed anything from back then.
That's awesome. Life is long if you know how to use it.
I suppose.
Seneca said that, not me. But yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us. I guess this will sort of wrap up our hangout. Derek, thank you so much for your time and for answering these serious and goofy questions. Thanks, Joe, for joining us again and for the updates on science, on the internet, and GeekWeek and everything. Let's see, we have future hangouts. I think the next hangout with science on Google Plus is with Jack Andraka, who invented a 3-cent test for pancreatic cancer that's almost perfectly accurate when he was 15 years old. We also have hangouts coming up with Karen Bondar, Dustin from It's Okay to Be Smart, and a couple of other really cool people, as well as the poster side hangouts, which are basically researchers coming on live to give short presentations about what they're working on and then to answer questions live. So there'll be short events. It's just a way to connect with scientists and for people with an interest in science, but perhaps not an expertise, to get connected with people who have experience, who can answer your questions and connect you in a way that is using the internet as it should be used for good. So with that, I guess we'll sign off. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
For science. Okay, I'm ending broadcast.